I'm Chris O'Neill. I work with Blackboard K-12. And as you've heard, we've done a lot of stuff with Learning Council all year, and we've been kind of excited to be a partner and continuing to be a partner. I do have a couple of esteemed colleagues in the back. Many of you know Lindsay Fishback, who is a Blackboard rep for Texas. She is not here, but her esteemed colleague, Eliza Wilson. If you wave around, there's Eliza back there. And also Adam Dolan is here as well in the back middle over there. I'm going to first tell you a very quick story. You know, a lot of us have talked about iPads today and things like that. I am going to tell you a funny personal story. Years ago, before I worked for Blackboard, I worked at University of Virginia, and I was doing a workshop for teachers over in Williamsburg. And I was telling my daughter, hey, I'm going to be driving to Williamsburg tomorrow to do this iPad workshop. And she, of course, said, oh I want to go. You know, can me and her friend come? So I said, yeah, you can come, but I don't know what you're going to do when I'm doing the iPad workshop all day. So she kind of sat for a second, and she goes, wait, the iPad workshop's all day? So I said, yeah, and she goes, it takes you all day to show people how to use an iPad. So I said, yeah, it's bigger than that. So she goes, how about, you know, if me and Jillian go with you, we can knock it out in like 30 minutes, Dad. Like, I promise you, we can show them how to use it way quicker than you can. So that's how times have morphed. A lot of you who know Blackboard K-12 probably know it through the LMS specifically, because that is what a lot of us have used in the past, either for grad school or undergrad school, to do blended and online learning. But what has happened really over the last 20 years that Blackboard's been working has been this kind of morph from people in higher ed who were either getting graduate degrees or getting teacher degrees and then moving into K-12 to say, we need an LMS that's more K-12 friendly. Also, by the way, can you add in, you know, collaborative video conferencing? Also, we need better data and analytics. It also needs to connect to open ed resources, and we want to be able to connect it to these other pipes and so on. So that's kind of what's been happening in Blackboard the last 20 years, really, as far as the teaching and learning side. It's really extended into something that is a much bigger ecosystem than just the core LMS. And the other piece that has happened along the way really has been the same feedback from districts saying, along the way, in addition to the LMS, we want, you know, web capabilities that match the LMS. So we want to be able to extend the LMS into our website and have those things sync up and match as well. So also over the years, a lot of people use Blackboard components or solutions for their website. What happened with that, that morphed along the way, is people also said, you know, we also want to be able to do mass notifications connected to those same logins. So we want to use our website for not just to host stuff, but also to connect out and connect with the parents in the community. So we also want an app then that reflects our website. So that's kind of happened in the last few years as well. So a lot of people who have not used Blackboard for the LMS portion have used it for these other kind of newer growths that have happened in the last few years. A pretty recent one has also been the student and school safety notion, because along the ways people have also said, hey, we have the Blackboard website solution, but we need opportunities to announce safety issues or mass notifications or emergency notifications via our website. And by the way, now it also needs to morph into not just the website. We want to convert our old school safety binders and things like that into a more technology digital version of that for safety purposes. So a lot has changed the last 20 years, 2 years, again, based on feedback really from K-12 to say, we can't keep doing these things the way we used to, so we need these additional flexibility. One of those pieces that's been really big the last few years that I personally liked, coming kind of from the other side as a K-12 teacher, I taught about 2 hours from here in Lake Charles in Calcasieu Parish, which is where I grew up. When I first started using Blackboard, there really wasn't a whole lot of data. There wasn't really data that we could get access to as teachers, period, other than the binders that we got from, at the time, CAT tests and ITBS tests, things like that. One of the growths in the last few years has really been this notion of data analytics behind an LMS. So bigger than, again, just the core LMS. But how do we give access to the data to school principals? And how do we give access to the data, or access to data to the teachers themselves? And the one that I personally really like a lot also is, how do we then create opportunities for student agency with data? So how do we give students the opportunity, now that we have all their data, we know all the stuff about them, what do they actually know about themselves? And that's been something I think has been a lot of fun for me personally, as a former teacher, has been what opportunities are we creating for students to use their own data? And are there opportunities for student agency to say, you know, I do want to log in and look at my own data, and what components of the LMS am I spending the most time in? So the district knows where we all spend our time, and the teachers know where we all spend our time, but do I even know what I'm doing in there? And if I know what I'm doing in there, how do I actually know, am I getting any traction from this? Or is this just a big giant spinning pie graph and I'm just running through the year doing stuff? So these opportunities, I think, to dig a little bit deeper into the analytics has been kind of eye-opening for me. Again, somewhat new to Blackboard to be able to see the actual potential behind that. But then the bigger connection is, so then what? So how do we give this in the hands of students and help them make it helpful and useful? The other piece has been, and Zia Learning spoke to this a little earlier, the bigger picture of professional development. So of course I joke about the workshop that I did, which really was pretty much 8 or so years ago, unboxing your iPad and look at all the cool stuff. But then how do we fast forward into this bigger notion of how do teachers get access to professional development? And how do I personalize my own professional development? Because maybe we don't all need an unboxing your iPad workshop. Maybe you two need that, but the rest of us need, I have struggling 7th graders, or I have so many ESL students that I'm trying to figure out new opportunities to give them for oral fluency. And maybe this is the solution or the tool that helps me do that. So looking also behind the scenes of the Blackboard professional development is there has to be a lot of data there too, not only for those who are taking part. So I want to look across, I'm not sure if you can see this from where you're sitting, but I want to look across at my colleagues in the building and see, well, who is standing out as far as activity in this realm? And then part B of that is the principal or the curriculum coordinator. How do I look across the school and see, are there standout attendees to this professional development? Who's causing the most waves or the most questions around whatever topics that we've decided have been priorities in this building for PD? So again, being able to kind of look behind the scenes and identify, maybe instead of me being the PD coordinator all the time, I look at data such as this and say, actually, people keep tagging Leilani in these online conversations, so maybe I need to tag her and say, by the way, instead of me next week, why don't you just do this session? Because it appears that you're kind of getting a lot of discussion going in your conversations online, or you're getting a lot of activity in some of the gamification components of PD that a lot of us like and use now. Another piece that I will say, again, probably from a former hat, when I taught elementary, I was not the special ed teacher, but I was an inclusion teacher, or the teacher whose inclusion students worked with me. And I do remember sort of back in the day that notion of, 504s and IEPs, and those were something that the special ed teacher would tell me about, and then I would be the one to kind of, listen to her and rely on her to make either accommodations, or if I had to come up with alternate format documents, she or the special ed department would be the ones to do that. What's also morphed really in the last few years has been the ease with which we make documents more accessible. So that's been a request specifically from K-12 as well is, okay, so all these LMSs are accessible and they meet ADA compliance and so on, but what about all the stuff that we put in it? So there's a ton of us as teachers putting PDFs and PowerPoints and Words and so on inside the LMS. Well, the LMS itself, regardless of which one you use, can only go so far as to say the mechanics can be accessible, but if you're just dumping really poorly formatted PDFs and things like that in there, well, what about the end user then that says, hey, it was easy for me to get inside your Blackboard LMS, and now there are 50 PDFs and my screen reader does not read them. Or I have just general vision issues. Maybe it's not an actual clinical diagnosis, but I have general vision issues, and these PDFs are nothing for me because they're just funkily formatted. Or somebody scanned an old book and just saved it as a JPEG, and now I'm trying to open this up in my screen reader, and it does nothing. It says, giant image. Well, that's not helpful for me as someone who has a diagnosed accessibility issue. So that's, again, been another component that's kind of changed and grown from the field into this whole notion of the digital landscape is bigger than just buying stuff. It really is thinking about who's using this stuff and to what extent are they using this stuff. And in the case of accessibility, how successful are we in making these great documents that we create as teachers? How successful are we at making those things accessible? Again, beyond just the compliance issue of saying it has to work on this device, but even so far as to say from the personalized learning angle, what if I'm a student who just says, I want to log into the LMS and get the handouts, but I want an MP3 version of that. Or I want an HTML5 formatted version of this Word document because I just want to look at it on my ebook or my iPad or whatever it is. So being able to have kind of tools that help me do that. This particular one is of personal, fascination for me is this tool called Ally, which is an accessibility tool that Blackboard uses that will take these documents that teachers put inside an LMS, again, whether it's Blackboard or not, put inside an LMS and automatically convert those to more accessible formats. So I can just upload my PDF and it will generate for me automatically an MP3 version or an HTML5 version or electronic Braille version. And then along the way, it gives me feedback too, as the teacher, to say, by the way, you uploaded these and we did create a more accessible version, but did you know, from scratch, you really should be thinking better about alt text for your images, or about using the built-in Microsoft Word formatting features as opposed to just giant font size for your headers and things like that. So giving us guidance too, again, about this bigger picture of the digital landscape that isn't just stuff and isn't just access, but good access, and access that makes sense for us as adult or otherwise learners, adult or K-12 learners. I'm going to put this on for just a minute, just as another quick fun story. I'm a total data nerd, as Leilani and a few others in the room know. So I'm always fascinated looking at data with schools. This is actual data from when I was back at the university, that I feel like it sends a message to all of us to say, we can give you all the cool graphs you want and all the bar graphs, and we can say all these percentages and things do whatever, but unless all of us sit down and kind of dig into root cause of what's happening, again, all the pie charts and things like that don't make a lot of sense. Unless I'm getting traction to say, it was this data point that we focused on, and I want to watch this grow as the year progresses. This is just some fun data that we did with an elementary school. And we asked teachers to look at what was happening. And these K-5 students were surveyed about their happiness at school and how they feel like they belong and so on. It's K-5, so I like to pick, because I taught 4th grade first for 5 years, and then I moved to middle school. And I was just blown away by how elementary recess was versus middle school recess. So we started looking at this data. If you notice, the kids are super happy. They're elementary, so it's not that hard to keep kids happy. I'm joking, by the way. But as you get down, there are a few that say things like, students are treated fairly by the people on recess duty. Well, that's something's going on with that little data point. So as we sat with them, we asked a group of teachers, hey, without digging any further, what do you think's happening here? And teachers would say, oh, well, I don't know, maybe this is a bullying issue. And so we kind of kept digging. We looked at, sort of intentionally held some of the data back just to force us all to have a good data deep conversation. The reality really was, when we broke this down into grade levels, K-3 were still happy and said, we're totally treated fairly by people on recess duty. And we joked because, of course, in elementary, who's on recess duty is, Mary Poppins. So they're out there having super fun time at recess duty, making curtains out of, dresses out of curtains and things like that. We split this out, and then the 4th, 5th, and 6th kids, when we asked them separately, they were the ones who were saying, recess duty is, god-awful, we don't like it. And so the problem really wasn't the school. It was the timing of recess and the people on duty and the activities available to the students. This school that we worked with, by the way, had hired a consultant, a bullying consultant, for about $5,000 to come in and deal with bullying and blah, blah, blah. And the reality was, it wasn't even really a bullying issue. But nobody had taken the time to dig down into the data and see, where can we get traction? These are still issues that have to be fixed. But, come on, we all have to dig into this and figure out, is this really what's happening? Is it really just that, boys aren't as interested in reading as girls? It's probably not that. I bet you there's other issues at play. So I say all that again to say that's sort of what we're trying to do also recently, is say, without buying this stuff, just sit down with us and let's just have a conversation about, is an LMS really the right thing? Or if you already have an LMS, are people even doing stuff in it? Well, before you buy more stuff or do more stuff, what is it that you're trying to do? Who's trying to get traction? Is it teachers? Is it students? Let's think through this together really as kind of a united team. So I'll sort of wrap up to say, again, that's kind of the focus of what we are trying to do, is get deeper conversations with you all to see, are there things that we're doing already with you that you need help with? Are there areas in which you need to grow that you think, we don't know where to turn? Or can you just sit down and have a conversation and say, we don't even know what's out there, but we want to do this thing. So help us find the right match for that thing that we want to do in our district. We focus on these kind of conversations, and we would love if you would chat with any of the three of us, again, about these sorts of conversations. So the LMSs, that's super cool. That's an easy one. Beyond that, who is better off because you have an LMS? Is it the teachers? Is it the students, principals? Maybe only one of those is appropriate, but probably somebody's got to be better off than you've just stuck stuff in there. And we, again, would love to have a conversation with you about how to grow kind of beyond the LMS. The other middle question, again, is this whole kind of notion of branding, is what do people say about us on Twitter? So how do we manage our social media? When people visit our website or they're thinking about moving into such and such neighborhood, do they go to our website and see, oh, this is awesome. This reminds me of Netscape AOL browser. Or do they look at a website and go, there's a lot of cool data here that tells me a real picture about this website? And then the last one, again, this notion around accessibility, we have a lot of stuff online, either on our website or in our LMS, but have we really taken a look at who is able to get to this in the way that makes the most sense for them? Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a diagnosis for I need accessible formats, but it really just might be a personal preference that says people may be more inclined to use the materials you've created if you thought through this bigger picture of accessibility. So again, there are 3 of us in the room. Please feel free to find us this afternoon or right afterward. Thank you all very much. Have a great afternoon.